What the actual F do you mean that the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni drama is still going on? Well, hi, my name is Katie, and I have been following everything and all of the receipts since the beginning. And trust me, I had a couple of videos pop off in the last few days, and there has been a lot of people in my comment section saying, what do you mean this is you guys, it is still going on. It is still going on, and it is spicier than ever. So I decided to start a little series here going month by month, the most dramatic things that have happened. And we are kicking it off with June because June was by far the most chaotic month of this entire trial. The Wayfair parties and Justin Baldoni filed a letter with the judge saying, yo, Blake Lively hasn't handed over any of her mental health records or any of her doctor's notes showing that she went and got treatment for her emotional distress. As a part of these sexual harassment claims and all of her retaliation claims, she is also claiming that this emotionally damaged her and, all of these repercussions that came from that. And so we need those mental health records to help us with our defense. What do you know? One day later, on June 3rd, Blake Lively and her legal team said, no, Judge, we are not handing over Blake Lively's medical records. In fact, she is dropping all of her claims of emotional distress. She's not emotionally distressed, only garden variety emotional distress, which means that she wouldn't have to turn over any of her mental health records or any of her doctor's notes. She could just have friends and family come up and testify on her behalf saying, yeah, she was bummed out. I don't know why I laughed at that. I wrote this script and I don't know why I thought that was funny, but I think it's because I'm nervous, you guys. I promise emotional distress is not funny. So on the 5th of June, we got a declaration from James Fitzstuka, a former Daily Mail reporter who had been involved because he was playing both sides of the fence. He had originally talked to Leslie Sloan on the phone and I guess had some conversation where Leslie Sloan said, yeah, Blake was SA'd on the set of It Ends With Us. And so in text messages he sent to Justin Baldoni and his legal team, he goes, yeah, she said she was SA'd and all these different things. In this new declaration that was filed on the 5th, James Fitzstuka says, and I quote, in those text messages, my use of the phrase SA'd was a mistake. I meant to say SH'd, which is an entirely different situation. So he's backtracking. Also in this declaration, he says, Ms. Sloan never told me that Ms. Lively was SH'd or SA'd by Justin Baldoni or anyone else. And the Wayfair parties and their counsel did not consult me about what my use of the term SA'd meant. Like, you need to consult and figure that out. It's just insane. But he filed this whole thing officially under oath, saying like, yo, that's all that stuff is not true. The Wayfair parties are bad. Blake Lively's team is good. On the 6th of June, Blake Lively and her legal team filed a bombshell letter saying that the Wayfair parties and Justin Baldoni have been engaging in clandestine tactics, aka they have been using like draft emails to communicate with each other secretly so that way they couldn't access those communications. Aka, we learned about it as it was all happening, but I guess you can type out messages to someone in your drafts in your email, and then when they go into that email, they can do it, and then it doesn't leave a record of like exchange back and forth. So there was that happened on the 6th. And one of the biggest rulings on June 9th, the countersuit, that $400 million countersuit that Justin Baldoni and Steve Sarowitz filed against Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and the New York Times was dismissed. And so I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes from, and everybody thought, oh, this whole thing's over with, because when Blake Lively sued Justin Baldoni, he turned around and sued her and other parties, and it's that additional lawsuit that they filed that got dismissed. The judge basically said they didn't have enough evidence, even if everything that they had was true and on their side, they didn't have enough to support the claims that they needed in order for that to even be successful. So it wasn't that the information was true or false, it's just more that they didn't have the information and the evidence that they needed to prove the claims in court. And if you want to dive more into that, it's really that Blake Lively's harassment allegations were legally protected because she filed a complaint with the California Civil Rights Department. So all of the information that was in that complaint was legally protected. And then the New York Times as well was legally protected by the journalistic privilege. So Any claims for defamation or anything else were protected under other legal processes, so it wasn't ever going to work out in there. The judge, however, did say as a part of this dismissal that Justin Baldoni and his legal team could try and rework some of the contract interference claims if they wanted to, and rework some of those other claims that might have had a little bit more merit to them. However, they let that timeline pass and they did not actually refile a second amended complaint. So they let that timeline pass and they allowed their countersuit to be dismissed. Then, on June 13th, Blake Lively and her legal team filed a letter with the court saying, hey, Justin Baldoni and his legal team are trying to get a hold of mine and Taylor Swift's text messages. She is not a part of this. She is irrelevant. Please let us have this protective order so that they can't get a hold of our texts. On June 18th, the judge ruled that, hey, sorry, Blake, you were the one that told the court that Taylor Swift has relevant information that could be helpful to proving or supporting the working environment on the set of It Ends With Us. You were the one that told the court she has relevant information to your claims. So because of that, they are going to allow Justin Baldoni and his legal team to view the text messages in regards to that time around the filming. So Blake lost that one. Justin Baldoni and his legal team are able to see and have, I'm assuming to this day, seen those messages and know some shit. It's also important to note that this ruling wasn't to say like, oh, Taylor Swift, it has to be deposed. It was more to be like, no, they can see the text messages to see if it helps support their defense or not. That's all they were doing. It's just seeing text, right? You know, the ones that Blake was planning to just use and leak anyway. We noticed on the 20th that there was a couple of lawyer switches for James Fitzduca. And later we found out, which we'll get there when we get to the July stuff, but later we found out that he ended up getting fired from the Daily Mail. And so he was changing counsel, and he has some explanations as to why that is later on. But it's important to note that that happened. Finally, I will say that it's important to note that also in June, there was a lot of motion happening between a PR guy named Jed Wallace and Blake Lively herself. They are in a separate legal action against each other down in the court in Texas, a federal court in Texas. But they are also battling it out in this main lawsuit. So on June 26th, there was an order because James Fitzduca was getting dismissed out of the original, and she was trying to figure out a way to keep Jed Wallace tied into this main lawsuit because she feels like he was heading this co-conspiracy. But he has never lived in New York, and I guess there's this whole thing where if you can't be tried in a court or in a place where you have no ties and you've never done business and you have no relation to, you can't do that. So she was trying to try him in New York and keep him in this New York case. And he's like, yo, I'm not a New York guy. So she's been trying to pull out all the stops to figure out a way to keep Jed Wallace, this PR professional that Blake Lively, I should say, she claims that he is heading a online smear campaign, which seems to be her big drive now, where he's this digital online master guru. Hi, Jed, you're probably going to watch this. But he's this online digital guru where he's the puppet master that is changing algorithms and creating Reddit threads and doing all these different things to try and ruin her reputation. On June 26th, she was asked to file a letter to try and tie him to the main courts because they were about to make some decisions on whether or not Jed Wallace was going to stay in this lawsuit or he was going to be dismissed out. So that is the conclusion for June. So I'm editing this video and I know somebody's going to come in and go, what about the Van Zandt? There was so much Van Zandt between the 28th and the 30th, but Van Zandt is its own thing. Like, I feel like we need to treat Van Zandt like its own topic. So I am going to separate that out and I will put it in this series and I will film it. I will do it justice, I promise you. Just in case somebody wants to sneak in here and go, where's Van Zandt? Van Zandt's a big deal though. It's going to be their downfall. And when I say their downfall, I mean Blake and Ryan. Maybe the New York Times. I feel like the Jed Wallace Texas situation needs to be a whole different ballgame. So I'm going to recap this as the Wayfair Lively June 2025 recap. So if you guys have questions, there were some major movements that really happened, a lot of big shifts, some crazy things, but shit just keeps getting crazier. So July was wild. We're gonna have to do July here. So stay tuned. I will post that as soon as I get a minute.